Jay, over to you, my friend. Just wanted a big mihi to you. Like, I just think, I noticed you got an award quite recently for your fantastic YES platform. So big congrats for all the stuff that you do. So I'll pass over to you, my friend.
Kia ora, everyone. My name's Jay and I am from Youth Employment Success. I'm just going to do a little bit of pipiha for you all. Ko ngā moe, ko hipirangi, ko tawhiti nui a pāua o ku maunga, ko waiapu, ko waikawa o ku awa, ko harauta, ko takitimu o ku waka, ko taumata aumihi, ko rua taupari, ko iriti koro o ku marae, ko raurua toi, ko te whānau rua taupari ki tūparoa, ko te whānau iriti kora o ku hapu, ko Ngāti Porou te iwi, no rua tōria ahau. No Ōtepoti toka kainga e nainei, ko Haerewa, ko Walker, ko Hiki Tapua, ko Mahuika, o ku whānau, ko Sarah Haerewa toku kuia, ko Jay Haerewa ahau. So my name is Jay Haerewa and I am the National Program Manager for Youth Employment Success, based here in Ōtepoti. I'm just going to run through a little bit about what we do. And then if you have any questions at the end, I'm happy to answer, so just let me know. So Youth Employment Success offers employment-based opportunities to rangatahi aged 16 to 24. So we have an awesome platform, www.youthemployer.nz. And there is two different pathways on there, one for our employers and one for our rangatahi, and it's focused more around each of their needs and the interactions that they will have with Youth Employment Success. So we've got approximately 200 employers across 7 locations throughout Aotearoa, and we're providing rangatahi opportunities to engage with employers and industry, explore career pathways and gain valuable employment skills. So a little bit of our whakapapa. We were launched here in Ōtepoti in 2016, and it was a collaboration between the Ministry of Social Development, the Dunedin community, and Firebrand Digital Design and Marketing, which is where the Youth Employment Success program is run from. And so basically what was happening at the time, we were sort of coming out of that real bad point for Aotearoa where we had extremely high youth unemployment rates in 2009, and the government had sort of been trying to work to do something to deal with it. And here in Ōtepoti, they'd sort of got a bit of a fund together, and it was called a part of the South Dunedin Social Sector Trials, which is a great name. But basically what happened was the Ministry of Social Development had recently been on a trip to the UK to look at what they were doing to deal with their youth unemployment issues. And at the time, one of the hot topics was that there'd been some research around the benefits of rangatahi having engagements with mentors. So when I talk about mentoring, a mentor means someone that isn't a parent or a teacher and is providing those positive engagements and interactions around employment or industry or pathways. And so basically what the stats were was that if a rangatahi had a positive interaction with a mentor, with 4 or more mentors, they were 25% more likely to gain successful employment. And so that was sort of hot off the press, and the Ministry of Social Development was thinking, oh, what can we sort of do to deal with this? How can we take this information and you know, realize something with this? What can we do? And so we're very lucky down here in Ōtepoti. We've got a really engaged business community. Lots of the people that live here and employ people here and own businesses or run organizations are all really fantastic youth employers. And so what the goal was to shift those opportunities from being access through the whole "it's not what you know, it's who you know" pathway that a lot of people get employment through, and make it more visible and accessible for everyone. And so the idea was to tell the story of these employers. They're already doing a fantastic job with our rangatahi here in Ōtepoti. They'd already been offering work experience and employment opportunities. But what we wanted to do was to share their stories so that we could then encourage other employers to jump on the waka and offer those opportunities. And at the same time, we were providing access to those opportunities via the platform. So we were taking away those barriers, where the jobs were just going to people that they knew, or they knew a parent, and then the kid would get the job that way, and so we were really trying to deconstruct that and really make those opportunities visible to everyone instead of just to a select few. And so the idea was initially that we would contact employers that we knew were already offering opportunities, whether that was they were hiring someone that was between the age of 16 to 24, or whether they were giving work experience to schools or supporting gateway programs. And we would get them all on board this platform so that the young people could see, hey, if I contact this employer, I know that they're going to be youth friendly. And so we started off with 10 employers here in Ōtepoti. And initially, this was back in 2016, initially we had like contact phone numbers and things like that on the website. But for those of you that work in the youth space, I'm sure you understand actually what a challenge it is to get young people to pick up the phone and call someone. And so we realized very quickly that wasn't going to work for that initial step. When we had a rangatahi that had never experienced an industry or had any kind of employment engagement whatsoever, how are we going to make that more comfortable for them? And so then we started creating these employer profiles that have a little video. So the video is like their soft introduction to the employers. And so they get to go on, have a look at what this employer is about, hear about what the youth that are working for them like about the business or organization. So they get that little soft intro and a bit of a warm up to engaging with those employers. And then they can create a profile, and then through that profile, they can apply for opportunities digitally. So they don't initially have to make that phone call. And then those interactions are sent from the platform to the employers. So that's a little bit about the whakapapa of youth employment success. And now to give you a bit of the why. So our kaupapa here at Youth Employment Success is to work towards an Aotearoa that actively engages with and supports all rangatahi. We want to build communities that own their rangatahi unemployment issues and work collaboratively to remove barriers to success. We wanted to shift that onus from only being the responsibility of schools or parents to support rangatahi into these roles, but actually say, hey, this affects our entire community, it affects our community, our economy, it impacts our businesses. If we don't have opportunities for these young people to train, how are you going to future-proof your business? There's not always opportunity to hire people at a skilled level. So sometimes that means that we have to commit to building up these young people. And in turn, that builds our community, and it builds a space where we all want to partake in, that we all want to participate in, and we all, are proud of. And so that's kind of our approach to dealing with this issue, shifting the onus from the individuals, from the parents and the gateway teachers, and saying, hey, this actually impacts all of us. And so we all have a responsibility to make sure that our young people are supported and have opportunities for success. So just to give you a bit of an idea of what the platform is like, as I mentioned before, the platform is www.youthemployer.nz. It is completely free to use. It doesn't cost our employers anything to come on board. And so each of our regions are funded slightly differently. As I mentioned before, we started here in Ōtepoti, but we're now also in Eastern Southland, Nelson, Tasman and Marlborough, the West Coast, Waimate and Waitaki, and also Wanganui in the North Island. And what we're actually currently working on at the moment is a collaboration with Te Kura, so that their students in their Leaving to Learn program can access it. And we are working really hard on the Ministry of Social Development to roll this program out nationwide. It would be incredible to be able to say to these rangatahi that we're working with now, hey, look, it doesn't matter where you go in the country, you can access these tools, and there's going to be employers everywhere you go you can engage with. So it's super mobile friendly, which is super important for our rangatahi. Most of our rangatahi, if they have access to tech in their home, it's generally a mobile device, and we see that through the stats on our analytics and reporting as well. So we also have a job board. Now, our job board is free to list, so any youth-friendly employer throughout the country can load jobs onto the job board, and basically the deal is that these roles need to be suitable for rangatahi aged 16 to 24 years. And that's really it. You know, you need to understand that you are dealing with a youth audience, and your job listings can be loaded on. It's free for the employers to set up a profile. If the employers throughout the country are also a part of the Youth Employment Success Program, they get additional benefits, like they get their branding pulled across to their job listings, similar to the likes of Seek or Trade Me. But one of the big bonuses is they're not having to pay for it. I'm not sure if any of you have listed a job recently, but you're looking around $200 to list a job on Trade Me or Seek. And a lot of small businesses especially just don't have the putia to be able to do that. And so that's a really cool tool. If you want to share that with the rangatahi you're working with or with employers, feel free. So I just want to walk through now, what is an opportunity? You hear me saying, hey, we've got these employment-based opportunities, but what does an opportunity actually look like? So opportunity doesn't necessarily mean employment. What we're trying to do is build up these skills so these young people can become employed. As a result of these engagements, there are times where a young person is hired. For example, recently we had a young guy that was interested in electrical. He had worked for, had been working at Countdown, had a casual job, and had done a year course in electrical engineering at Polytech, but was really struggling with the classroom environment. So he'd sent out 16 CVs to different electrical businesses within the Otago region, trying to find an apprenticeship. And it just wasn't working. I'm sure that a lot of you have experienced that with your rangatahi too, that you're working with. Oftentimes there's gatekeepers. We'll go into a business to hand in our CV and it won't get past the receptionist. One of the benefits of using the platform is that you're going directly to either a recruitment team or someone that's higher up in management that actually manages the interactions. So this young person reached out, they said, hey, look, I've been trying to do this on my own. I'm really struggling. Would you be able to help me use the platform? So he came into the office and we set him up a profile, and he applied for 2 opportunities. One of our employers is Aotea Security, and Aotea Security is like a branch of electrical. So it's technician type work, electrical technician, and they set up big security systems all around the country. And so he applied for an opportunity there, went in for some work experience, and within a week he'd been offered an apprenticeship. So these are the knock-on effects of what can happen, and that's what we try to say to our rangatahi. You may be applying for a coffee date with this employer, but what you're doing is you're actually creating a presence in their space for yourself, so that when opportunities do come up, they're going to think of you. If they know other people within their industries, they're going to say, hey, look, I know this young person, could be great for you. And then other times it really is just about building up those skills, because the young person themselves doesn't feel ready to take that employment step, but is just building their skills. So some of the opportunity types that we have, just send this out a little bit, sorry, Tane. One of the sections is presentation. So employers can come along and do a booth at a careers day. They can run open sessions. So open sessions are when a cohort of rangatahi are taken through a business and they look at all of the different day-to-day operations, the roles within the business. And generally that's hosted by a leader or a manager within their team. And then there's an opportunity for the rangatahi to ask questions. It's quite a nice one because, we do have a lot of rangatahi that aren't quite at the point where they're confident enough to go into an employment situation on their own. So it gives them a little bit of confidence being with the group, which is nice. And then some of our employers offer training course presentations as well. So they'll go into schools and do that type of mahi. For our rangatahi, some of the opportunities that they can apply for are desk shadowing. So that's when rangatahi would go in and sit with an employer for a day, for half a day. Maybe there's a specific role within that business's team that they want to look into. So, a young person might be interested in graphic design. They can go and sit with the graphic designer and actually see what that role is in the day-to-day. And it just gives them some insight. A lot of young people go off to study and they actually have no idea what the day-to-day is like in that role. So it gives them some insight into what it could feel like to be in that role, what kind of responsibilities you might have, and whether it's actually something that they want to continue to pursue, whether that's through further education or internships or apprenticeships. Some of the other opportunities that we offer are internships. We have skills reviews. So, that's pretty self-explanatory. Rangatahi will go in and say, hey, this is what I've done. This is what I want to do. What do I need to do to get there? We have opportunities like business walkthroughs. So rangatahi can go in and have a look on their own one-on-one through a business and learn about all the different facets of that business and all the roles that exist there. We also have coffee dates. Coffee dates are probably one of our most popular opportunities. It's really casual. It's just a catch up and a kōrero with someone within that team to learn about what they do, ask any questions that they may have. And it's one of those building block steps that our rangatahi take to start to build their confidence. Our employers also have the opportunity to mentor and support other businesses, which is really important. Some of the qualification opportunities that you can get are apprenticeships, industry standard training, NCEA assessments. There's professional development opportunities such as CV reviews, industry entry discussions, mentoring and mock interviews. And then, as I mentioned before, some of our employers also offer employment, and we've got the job board there as well now, which is fantastic. So just wanted to go through some of our outcomes over the last year, just to give you an idea of what our success looks like at the moment. So over sort of from the beginning of COVID through to now, we've had around 45,000 rangatahi visit the Youth Employment Success website. We've had 372 opportunity requests. And for us, that is actually, that number's really good considering how many of our businesses had to close down through COVID, or were just not taking people into their environment due to health risks and things like that. So we're really stoked that we were still able to deliver that many opportunities in that period throughout our regions. So we've got 184 youth employers at the moment providing 1,400 opportunities throughout the motu. We've had 619 opportunity seeker logins. So once the rangatahi sets up their profile, that captures the amount of times they'll go on and into their profile. The Yes platform has 552 opportunity seekers currently. And this year we had held a digital careers fair, which was incredible, called Operation Find My Job. And we had 500, over 500, almost 600 registrations for that event. It was 2 days, one in March and one in June. And it was an incredible event. We had around 15 employers that were guest speakers, and lots of different opportunities and resources for our rangatahi to access. And at that point, everyone was still super cautious about being out in public. And so delivering that online was an incredible opportunity and a first for us. So it's hopefully something that we'll continue to do in the future as well. So over the past few years, Youth Employment Success has had several awards. So we've had a couple of awards for public good and social impact, which is really incredible. And then we had a design award for our event that we ran this year. So for that event, we were funded to offer 150 opportunities for rangatahi to come to the event. And as I mentioned, we had 600. So, we were really, really proud of that. And then most recently, with the integration of our social media marketing and Indigenous branding, as well as the events that we're running, including more of a kaupapa Māori approach. We were fortunate enough to win the Māori Business Award at Business South this year, so it's something that we're super proud of. So we're across loads of different social media channels teams. So if you want to know the new employers that we're having on board, the events that we're hosting, the place to find that information is across our socials. Yes, we have made it to TikTok. My face is on there sometimes, but it's the space that our rangatahi are in, and we have great engagement there. So totally encourage you to be in that space too if you're looking to engage with rangatahi. So any questions? I'm happy to answer any questions you might have about the platform, about what onboarding might look like. So feel free to ask away.
All right, so has anybody, firstly, thank you for a fantastic presentation, and once again, like a big congrats. Like, you guys, you're not a huge organisation, but you've just achieved so much led by you. And like, I'm so big on young people. That bridge from school, or even not to school, into work is such a hard road to go. It's so much easier to go to university. Going to university, it's like a boulevard with flashing lights, so you know how to get there. But actually, when you're trying to get an apprenticeship or an internship or into work, it's much, much harder. So having something like this is just so helpful.
Yeah, so, and having all of the employers in one place, that was a big thing. And these young people go there knowing that they're youth friendly. I think that's one of the key things. Like, some of the young people that we work with have said things like, oh, I just don't like going in because I don't know if they hire youth, or I don't know if I'll have enough experience, or I'm too young and I don't, and so that's the kind of feedback we get. So we really want our young people to understand that there are incredible employers out there that do want to support them into opportunities, and not everyone is, that's the reality of it. Not everyone is youth friendly, not everyone is doing the right thing. And so being able to pull together those people that understand what we're trying to do, that want to contribute, that want to make a difference for the rangatahi in their community, is really incredible to have them put themselves forward to the most of the time. Initially, we had to work hard to get our employers to talk to them about our kaupapa to make sure they understood what we were trying to do. But now we have employers reaching out to us saying, hey, look, I love what you're doing in the youth space. I want to work with the rangatahi. How do I come on board? What can I do? What kind of proof do I need that I'm going to be a youth-friendly employer? And so that's been really incredible to watch especially over the last 2 years.
What sort of proof do they need?
So basically, they have to have evidence that they've successfully had someone under the age of 24 employed within their business. And they also, the other thing that they can show as proof is that they've given work experience opportunities to rangatahi. So that may be through gateway programs, or, even I don't know if everyone has this in their regions, but we have careers weeks down here at our high schools. And during the careers week, the rangatahi actually have to go out and find work experience for that week, which is not easy. And so if they are already engaging in those sorts of programs, then that's perfect. And then we also, when we're onboarding an employer, we actually interview rangatahi that are working for them. And so they give their feedback on what it's like to work within that business as well, which is part of why the videos are so important, because it gives the rangatahi that are looking for opportunities the chance to see actually what this young person's experience is like. Every now and then there'll be an employer that doesn't currently have a rangatahi working for them, but they have had previous employees, and they're really engaged in that space. And generally, to be fair, the ones that reach out to Youth Employment Success, they understand that it's going to be some work for them. And so generally, they don't reach out unless they're really genuine about what they're trying to do. So that is the first thing really that happens. Even this morning we had Reading Cinemas. They're a huge youth employer here in Ōtepoti. They've lots of rangatahi working for them. You know, they got in touch and they were saying, hey, look, we didn't even realize you guys were doing this, mahi. Come on in and talk to us. We'd love to talk to you about how we can offer work experience opportunities. So that's really cool.
Hi, kia ora, Jay. It's Melissa from Tamaki Makaurau. A quick question. When you say work experience, these are paid opportunities?
No. So
okay.
there's no long-term work experience. We do encourage employers for internships and apprenticeships, they need to be paid. But work experience could be like a half an hour coming in and having a look around and seeing what someone does.
So would you consider like volunteering opportunities? Does that fit in with the work that you do, or doesn't really?
We have all sorts of different organisations on board, and so some of those organisations are not for profit. So like the likes of Malcolm Trust, which recently rebranded to Southern Youth Development. They're a not-for-profit that work with the rangatahi, but they also offer opportunities for young people to come in and see what it's like to work in a social sector, you know, where you're doing that space. So absolutely. What we're trying to do is build those experiences. It's about having positive mentors from organisations and, you know, employers that are really committed to building the skills of those young people so that they can go on to successful employment opportunities.
Awesome. Well, the reason I ask is I was just recently with Volunteering Auckland, and they've released a really good community guide to engage youth as volunteers, but it might be useful.
Yes.
And if you're interested, I'd love to have a chat more, because part of the work that we do is employment services in schools. And a big key theme that came out of the Hui when this all first started was that the kids themselves said, we want to be able to explore opportunities in safe spaces, be able to fail fast, find out if this is where we want to be or not. And so I think this is really amazing. And if I could see more Auckland employers here, I'm more than happy to connect you with the Auckland Chamber of Commerce, etc. There's so many employment placement providers up here in Auckland that would love to know about this service. So if you want to have a chat, let's have a chat.
Yeah, that would be great. It's actually quite interesting, because when you were talking in your intro, we actually, APM in the West Coast is one of our employers. So that's really cool.
Keen to see it here in Auckland and grow it in Auckland. So if you want to chat.
Yeah, it's definitely on our to-do list. That's the goal.
Cool.
Yeah, also just connecting with that, I'm also Tamaki based. So and also just with the thing that you brought up, Melissa, about safe spaces, something that I was thinking as you were doing your presentation was, is there much of a component of employment rights in what you do in terms of teaching the rangatahi, making sure that they know their rights and making sure that they can, I guess, be confident that the employer that they'll be working with will also have a good awareness, and that way any kind of employment related issues that might arise down the line would be sort of easy to overcome and mean for a safer working environment for both groups. Yeah.
So we don't necessarily do we don't necessarily do the face-to-face stuff. So basically what we are is we're the conduit. So we connect the employers and the rangatahi. We're creating networking opportunities for them that they couldn't necessarily create for themselves. But what we do is we work with a lot of other organizations. And if we seize a need, then we connect them in. At one of our kaupapa, you know, we've talked to Shirley several times about is it's really, really important for us to collaborate and work with other people in the youth space. And that means over and beyond that youth employment space. So we work really closely with lots of other organizations. So we have, you know, like we work with Skillset down here, and they are like an alternative education provider, you know, for rangatahi that are out of school. And so they provide a lot of pastoral care. We connected in with another provider called Okaha, and they provide like really, really good pastoral care for rangatahi, like full wraparound service, going into apprenticeships and trades. And so for us, it's more about connecting into the services that are already there. So if like, we're always sharing things. So we have a news and resources section on our website as well for rangatahi to tap into. And when we were hosting our events, we had all of those really important links in a resources page for them to access as well. But would love to talk to you further about this type of thing too. It's you know, it's really important, like, you know, for us as adults to know our rights in the employment space, and for employers to understand.
Yeah, because we actually have a bit of a presence in Central Otago. So we come down to Central Otago once a year just to go around to all the different schools and make sure all the rangatahi there are up to speed with their rights. And maybe there's some opportunity for connection in that specific region, as well as hopefully at some point in the future in Tamaki. Yeah.
Shirley, if you want to share my email address with everyone afterwards, if anyone's got any useful information that we could share, or your services that we can connect rangatahi into, we'd love to be able to do that. As I said, like, we use our social platforms all the time. We're also doing resources all the time. So anything that is useful for our rangatahi, ultimately for us, that's what it's about. I'm really lucky that, you know, this goes beyond just being an organization or a service. The people that are behind Youth Employment Success, we've all been there. You know, the director of Firebrand, Bex, where Youth Employment Success is run from, left school at 14. You know, she didn't have all of those, and I was the same. I was encouraged to leave school at 16 to find a job. And so we didn't have those straightforward sort of pathways that a lot of people are fortunate to have. We didn't have all of the privilege, and you know, it wasn't easy. It wasn't easy for us. And one of the things that we struggle with is the fact that these things are still an issue now, you know, 30 years down the track. And so, yeah, it's really important. It goes over and beyond for us, you know, just being a platform, which is why we are always working overtime. You know, and I'm sure it's the same for many of you. I hear the same story with lots of people that work in the youth space. We all give so much, and that's because we see what needs to be done and what isn't being done, and we're trying to fill a gap. But yeah, the more we can all work together to do that, the better. And so I'm a real believer in that sort of collaboration, you know. So it'd be great to connect in with you all, and love to hear a bit more about what you do, and you know, do a bit of a newsletter with all of the information for everyone, and share that across our socials. Would be really cool to have that opportunity.
Yeah, very happy to share that, Jay. Are there any other questions? Comments?
Thank you, Jay, for that korero. Just wondered, in terms of mentorships, do you also provide any facility for that, or is that facilitated through the employers or directly with the students?
Yeah.
And if say some people were interested in being part of the mentorships, how could that work?
Yeah, so it basically, when our employers come on board, they get a list of the different opportunities that we can offer through the Youth Employment Success Platform. And then they select the ones that their business can deliver successfully, you know, things that they can actually commit to. And then, so we've got some employers that offer mentorships, and that is facilitated through their business. And most of them are already working in that capacity when they take on that role. But a lot of the key opportunities that are actually taken up, like I mentioned before, are actually the coffee dates, like something really casual where a young person can have a cordial with someone to build their confidence, to get some tips and tricks, to ask questions that maybe they might be too scared to ask in an interview type situation. And so, yeah, it basically is facilitated when the employers are onboarded onto the platform. So generally what will happen is the employer will reach out, they'll say, hey, I see what you're doing. I really want to be a part of this program. We're already, you know, we've already got 6 rangatahi working here, and we want to show other employers that they can do it too. Can we come on board? And then they'll do their video, they'll select the opportunities they want to offer, and then they deliver those opportunities.
Kia ora, Jay, Melissa again. What have you found were the, I guess, the barriers for most employers in employing youth? What's, I guess, the stopping us from
To be fair,
doing so?
I think it's mindset. You know, I think it's mindset. A lot of people, I don't know, it happened with my generation, it's happening with this generation. You know, there's always something where it's about hiring this generation of rangatahi. But actually there's employers at the other side of it too, that completely see the benefits of hiring the rangatahi, the energy and enthusiasm that a young person brings. Having the tech knowledge, you know, that they don't even really have to learn it. It's part of their, it's native to them. Tech is a natural tool. And so there's loads of benefits, and those employers generally are the ones that are reaching out to us. But when we're out in the community, you know, we're trying to change that mindset, you know, and part of what we do here means that we have to walk the walk too. So last year we took on 7 paid interns, and it's a lot. We're only small. There's I think 15 of us full-time employed. So 7 interns is a lot of interns, and it means it's extra work. But then the majority of us can see we've been there. We've had no skills. Even those that have gone to university, they've come out with no employment experience, and so they needed somebody to give them that opportunity. This round in November, we've just taken on another 5 interns. And so what we then try and do is we try and either provide employment for them here, or we connect them out in the community into other employers so that there's a roll on too. But it is really about saying, hey, if we can do it, then you can do it too. We're a small business, you know, we're a small business, and it takes time and commitment, but also I think it's your responsibility to make sure your team's on board as well. You know, it takes the whole business to support a young person, and they're going to have people within the team that they feel more comfortable approaching about those tough questions or even the simple questions. So making sure that everybody's committed to supporting them and making their time with the business a success is really important. But the biggest thing that we do is by sharing those stories of our employers, which is again why those videos are so important, because when the employers are coming on to have a look at what we do too, they can see the success that the other employers are having and why they're doing what they're doing. And it is contagious, you know. We'll have people ring up and be like, oh, you know, my mate owns a business down the road and he's, you know, been doing mentoring with one of the rangatahi through your program, and I want to do that too, you know. So it has that kind of impact as well. But it definitely comes down to mindset. I don't think it's nearly as much of a challenge as what people make it out to be, having rangatahi a part of your team. I just really don't. That's my personal opinion. But I've been there, and you know, it's one of the other things too, I think that's a challenge, is expecting a young person that's come straight out of school to go straight into a 40-hour week. If you can ease a young person into it, if you can start out at 25 hours and let them ease into it and add to their hours as they feel, you know, they have the capacity to do, having a bit of sensitivity around that is really important. But I think one of the things that's happened too is that we've had this period in time where we could get any skilled migrant that we wanted. We didn't have to train a young person, but that's not how things are now. If you're not future-proofing your business by providing opportunities, it's also going to impact you in the long run. Here in Ōtepoti, we've got the hospital build coming up, which is massive for our community. There's 7 flooring businesses here in Ōtepoti, and over half of them, by the time the flooring needs to go in to the hospital here, are going to be closed because they have not future-proofed their businesses. They've got no succession plans. They have no one stepping in to take on those roles. And so creating an awareness around the value of doing that as well is really important.
Yeah, it's a lot to think. I think you're absolutely right, Jay. I think it is a mindset, and but it's interesting, I think the more employers that employ young people, that starts becoming the norm, and then it starts a bit of a tipping point, really, because all the research shows that when you've got diversity, and diversity includes diversity of age, you then start having groups of people that become very innovative. And like it was so clear during COVID that those that weren't able to pivot, and often it was the very old conservative places, which were all staffed by older people, couldn't crash and burned. And so I think there's going to be, and so I love the idea that you're doing case studies around, you know, young people coming and what is it that they have actually brought. I think it's really valuable. Sharon.
I just want to thank you, Jay. I've seen you speak before, and yeah, it's always insightful and motivational, inspirational. I actually think that we're probably related. My mum's a karaka from Te Araroa, so probably along the way there somewhere. But my question was, so I'm in the Tararua district in Manawatu. How do we go about getting the Tararua on your site as a place? Because I work with, I'm an employment liaison, so I just work with employers to find people to hire and work with youth transitioning from school into work. And I've got a lot of groups and a lot of people here that would be really keen to get on board. It's just a matter of how do we go about doing that?
Yeah, it's one of the things that we've been working on over the last year. What we would like to do is for the Ministry of Social Development to fund it nationally. So at the moment we have funded different in each region, and it's quite interesting. So here in Ōtepoti, we're funded entirely by the Ministry of Social Development. In Waimate and Waitaki, they are funded by Rotary and the Business Hive. In Wanganui, that was actually funded by Wanganui and Partners and 100% Sweet. And then Nelson, Tasman, Marlborough and the West Coast are MSD top of the South, so up in that top region of the South Island. But what we want to do, you know, just to sort of have it on your radar a little bit, is it's our goal to take a case study to our regional commissioner here in Ōtepoti for the Ministry of Social Development, that she can then present at her hui around making this a national platform. We've tried to sort of sidestep it by becoming a part of Te Kura. So Te Kura, obviously, the old correspondence school, I think they've got something like 60,000 students and they're nationwide. And so, you know, we're trying to do it that way. So what we've done is created an API for them, basically a website tool that sends information from our employers to their platform so their youth can tap into it. So we're trying to find creative ways to do it while we don't have the funding. But the goal is, you know, and I will, if you'd like me to keep in touch with you about how we're getting on with it, then I absolutely will, because what we're, you know, that we don't want there to be any financial impact for the youth or for our employers. You know, they're already doing their bit. And so that's why we've got to sort of be creative about the funding and how, because you also need someone on the ground that's a champion in that region. It can't be all run from Dunedin. It needs to be about you and your region and your community. And if you don't have people out there actively talking about youth employment success, it doesn't work. It's the platform is fantastic. The tool is awesome, but it is just a tool. It takes people, just like everything else, it takes people, and you really need champions in your community that are going to champion the kaupapa, that are going to say, hey, this is what we're doing and this is why we're doing it. But yeah, if you want to keep in contact with me and I can let you know our progress and trying to, strong arm the government into getting this everywhere for rangatahi, then that would be incredible. My personal goal is for rangatahi to be able to access it no matter where they are. So if they, have to move towns for whatever reason, or if they're going off to study, they know that when they go there, they can access employers through this platform, and it's the place to go. But we're also super keen on sharing information about other services. So, if you want to connect in and work together to do a article that we can share on socials about what you're doing in your region, then we'd love to do that with you as well.
Yeah, cool. As a quick follow-up to that, have you spoken to or been in touch with any of the regional skills leadership groups or?
Yeah, so it's funny you say that. I had a hui with the Southern Regional Skills Leadership Group last week, and I'm having a hui with the Central Otago Regional Skills Leadership Group. And so we've talked about, in the Southern one, we didn't really talk too much about funding. We talked about how each of the regions is run and how they're currently funded, but not sort of around the scope of what the project would be for that area. And then we've also, so we've got a hui with the Central Otago Regional Skills Leadership Group, and we will actually be talking to them about, what it would actually take to roll it out in their region too.
So, Jay, if one of the risks always when you scale up, like particularly if you scale up too fast, is that you lose the essence of what you've got. And I think at the moment what you've got is something very personal, and you're the face of all of this. And so while I think it's the idea of going nationally is fantastic, what's your thought about the risk of that happening, where because we did the same thing with YEP, and suddenly it's each iteration gets less and less like its original version. What's the risk for you?
Yeah, so it's quite interesting, and that's why I when I was talking to you, I mentioned the champions. It's really important that each region has a person that champions the program. Because the reality is the whole idea was that we were the platform and that the community was taking ownership of those employment issues, because that's what we need. We need for the community to take ownership of those youth unemployment issues, but not just youth. There's so many other things as well. But this is, where we're focused. And so really what youth employment success is meant to be, it was the platform, and then each of those regions would have their champion. And so that's where you get that personalization, and you get that person that's going out to the school events, talking to the rangatahi, that's going into the alternative education spaces, that's working with the local connected team to connect them with job seekers. You do need that champion, and that's what we talk to people about when they say, oh, I want this rolled out in my region, how much is it going to cost? And we say, hold on, we need to take a step back. You need to make sure that there's somebody that's actually going to be there to facilitate this at your end. Yes, the platform is fantastic. It's a wonderful tool, but it is a tool, and there still needs to be people there. So in terms of monitoring the interactions and stuff that come through the platform, we do all that here. But in terms of that community engagement, there needs to be someone on the ground in that region. I think that's the only way to avoid that happening. There needs to be people there that are passionate, that can see the benefits of utilising a tool like youth employment success. So yeah, it's quite interesting, and you're right. it can be easy to sort of lose that momentum. We have been fortunate enough that all of my predecessors have been as passionate about the program as I have been. And so it's been an easy transition, and they've shared their why with me, and passed on the things that they've learned. And so we've had this sort of continuum of information, and that's been incredible. And it is really important that whoever is leading this in each of those regions is just as passionate.
All right, so I'm just aware of the time. So just in terms of big takeouts first, big thanks here. Once again, big congrats for what you've developed here. If everyone's happy, like I'd be happy. Oh, I know the other way around. What I'll do is we'll certainly share Jay's email with everybody. So please, what Jay has said, really happy that you make contact with her offline. Like I always see these are a bit of a speed date, really, in some ways, but great opportunity to connect. And it's really cool also seeing people who have jumped on actually connecting as well. So super cool. Love that, those unexpected benefits that go with that. So I think we might leave it there. So thank you, everybody. Love the innovation in this sector. Love that we're also, really putting ourselves out there in terms of young people. Thank you, Jay, and everybody have a great Christmas, and we'll see you all in the new year. Ka kite anō.